Hello, credit union community. Here are your topics for today's show. First up, what do you do when your team stops believing that their actions matter? Next, what's the single biggest succession planning pitfall that boards keep falling into? And last up, in a world of fintechs, mega banks, and AI, is the credit union's greatest strength, its local roots, actually becoming a liability? Welcome to Grow Your Credit Union. This is the podcast where credit union leaders gather, learn, and grow. I am your host, Joshua Barclay. If there is a topic that you want us to cover on the show, go to info@growyourcreditunion.com and let us know. Let's introduce my co-host, Becky Reed. Hello, Becky.
Howdy, y'all.
Okay, Becky, time for some banter. I think you know this. I'm from Connecticut, born and raised, and you know my Yukon Huskies are in the Final Four. Don't know how big of a hoops fan you are, but are you aware that there was a big game-winning shot last Sunday?
No, Josh, I don't watch basketball. I'm a football girl.
Becky, you know this breaks my heart that maybe we hit one of the greatest last-second shots in the history of March Madness, and you don't know what I'm... But anyway... I just wanted that to be our banter for the day. I
know I disappointed you so much, Josh. I do not want... Look, I'm traveling all over the country. I don't have time to watch. Actually, I could have probably watched it. I was in a casino where they had sports bars everywhere, and I'm sure it was on the TV.
Yep, probably was. So if anybody's listening and they're wondering, hey, what are your allegiances? I've said it in previous episodes, but the Yukon Huskies, let's go. Oh, Becky, we'll connect next episode. Our banter will be more aligned. But let's bring out our guest. Today, we welcome the VP of Community Impact and Partnerships at OneAZ Credit Union, Monica Meyerand. And Monica, I know that you're a Michigan State Spartans fan. I'm sorry for what we did to you. Apologies.
I'm so glad that you brought that up today, Josh, because when you started talking basketball, it's very close to my heart because I was in the zone when I was a student in college. So I am a huge fan of basketball and was very disappointed that we did not make it this year further. But I am rooting for U of A because I am living in Arizona. So go Wildcats, and hopefully we come up with a national championship. So my bracket is also thankful of that choice.
Most leaders assume that an underperforming team has a motivation problem or a talent gap, but research highlighted in the Harvard Business Review points to something different. When teams face sustained adversity, failed initiatives, constant change, uncertainty, the brain doesn't push people to act. It defaults to passivity. Martin Seligman and Stephen Mayer found that what actually has to be learned is the belief that effort changes outcomes. Seligman calls it the hope circuit, and when the hope circuit goes quiet, town halls and strategy decks won't turn it back on. So for credit unions navigating AI disruption, core conversions, margin pressure, maybe the issue isn't the teams are resistant to change. Maybe your employees have stopped believing that their actions matter. So Monica, let's kick things off. What do you do to restart the mindset of a team that stopped believing that their actions make an impact?
And Joshua, this is like a powerful observation that we definitely see across the industry and across the nation. At OneAZ, feedback is really important to our organization. So we're doing surveys and we're listening to what the associates are saying that they want. And a lot of things that we come back to is the why. What does my work do? What does that contribute to the overall strategy of the organization? And then as leaders, we have to provide those whys. What is it from a KPI standpoint? What is it from our big rocks? What are those things that we need to focus on so that we can provide that change in the culture and to keep the momentum going? Because with any organization, you do see a lot of change. We've had a lot of change recently at our organization, and it's just keeping that culture still close so everyone knows what they're working towards and that we're all rowing in the same direction.
Rowing in the same direction, kind of aligning culture. Good. Becky, on your end, through your experience, and I want to highlight this, Becky, because when we look at teams that are underperforming or employees that are underperforming, we often think, oh, they're lazy, they don't have the talent. But this study kind of proves that a lot of that comes from people just feeling like what they do doesn't matter, that they can't impact the organization, so they're just not going to try. So what are your thoughts on that, Becky?
Well, first of all, I think that absolutely can happen, especially when people feel like they're kind of running against a wall, right? They're trying to get things done. They're not able to get things done. And as a leader, what I always look at when an employee is underperforming, the very first thing I do is look at the mirror and say, what is it that I am not doing? Am I contributing to their inability to move forward? So do they have the right tools? Do they understand what it is that's expected of them? And are they given an environment that allows them to be successful? And so if you can say, yes, all of those things have happened and been provided to the employee, then perhaps it could be a performance issue. Then you start going down that path, right? But I think that when you are dealing with a team that is frustrated because they're not able to get things finished, at the end of the day, everybody wants to be successful. Everybody wants to finish what they were asked to do. Nobody wakes up. This goes back to the empathy thing, right? Nobody wakes up and goes, you know what? I'm not going to meet that deadline. I'm not feeling it. I'm not going to meet it. Now, they might say that because the deadline is unreasonable. That could be the case. And then it's their opportunity and your opportunity as a leader to go, okay, do we agree on this particular deadline? But when people are frustrated, they start giving up, right? I'm not going to try anymore. I keep beating my head against the wall. Then I think there are some opportunities to bring the team back together and to give them small wins. Let's get a little thing done and start gaining momentum, start gaining confidence as a team. Look what we just did, right? And then you can gradually go up and get bigger. And once a team realizes that they can be super successful together and they can meet deadlines and they can do amazing things, then you start increasing the complexity of what they're completing, right? Until pretty soon you can move mountains.
You mentioned the small wins, and that is one of the recommendations of the article. That in fact, what it comes down to is people feel like they never complete any tasks. They don't feel like they're actually advancing anything. And so they become apathetic. And so to your point, Becky, the small tasks, the small wins compound. People get their confidence and their swagger back. And then your team is back to performing at a high clip. Monica, anything you want to add to close out this particular segment?
I love all the commentary here in terms of connecting everybody for those quick visible wins, because we always often think of, let's just celebrate at the end. Let's celebrate at the end of the project, but we're also empowering the ownership throughout the process so that when they're able to do a small win, that they know that they contributed to the work that's being done to complete the overall project and how it helps the organization. And then additional thing to add would be leading with transparency and consistency. And that's something with my team, we always start with that, is that any one-on-one is like, and connection or touch points or team meeting, we want to be authentic with each other. We want to know what's going on, because we can't help if everything's just fine. It's not fine. We just want to make sure that we can work through it together, because we need to have those authentic selves when we're coming to these meetings or projects or kickoffs, whatever that might be, to help with those outcomes that we're looking for.
The credit union industry has a succession planning problem. We've talked about it a lot on this show. But in a recent CU Insight article, D.D. Myers lays out the 5 most important pitfalls boards must recognize and address when it comes to succession planning. And while I do want to go over the 5 succession planning pitfalls that D.D. lists in her article, I want to start with a fresh slate. So Monica, to kick off the conversation, in your opinion, what is the biggest succession planning pitfall currently plaguing the credit union industry?
When I think about the biggest succession planning pitfall, it's not just the process, it's often proximity, because we often feel that it just happens at the top. But it should be a system-wide movement where you're building your bench and you're taking those alongside with you. Because as leaders, we're the ones paving the path to bring others alongside us so that we can set them up for future leadership roles.
I love that you mentioned bringing it all the way down. Right now, it does feel like it only happens inside of an ivory tower on the 100th floor, and nobody else is kind of privy to that. Becky, do you want me to tell you what the 5 succession planning pitfalls were in the article?
Sure. I was going to mention Monica's. So that one I'm sure is on the list. So yeah, what are they?
Treating succession planning as a one-time event, swinging the pendulum too far, over-relying on the incumbent CEO and HR, neglecting compensation until it's too late, and number 5, under-investing in onboarding. Is there anything you want to dig into on that list, or do you think there is something that's not on here that really should be?
I think that what I have seen, all of those things I've definitely seen in boards and leadership. One of the things is it's a checkbox item, right? You have a policy, and the policy is generic usually, right? It's like, okay, if something happens, here's what we do. But I don't think many times that boards do a good job, and this is on the list actually, to do a good job of identifying who in the organization really should be part of that succession plan. And what I have witnessed is they don't do a good job of communicating to the people who they've identified that they've been identified. I mean, it's like, oh, guess what? If something happens to our CEO, you're going to be the interim. And, they're like, oh, I am. I didn't know that I was even in that conversation. And so what Dee Dee identified there is leaving that up to the existing CEO and HR, right? Oh, you guys figure out who is going to be succeeding, or, if somebody wins the lottery, we like to say win the lottery instead of getting hit by a bus because it's a positive instead of a negative. But, when somebody wins the lottery and they exit, what are we going to do immediately? And identifying specific people in the organization is something the board usually does not get involved in. And I think that they should.
Help me understand, because I'm not understanding this topic of succession planning. We're always talking about it. It's always a buzz in the industry. And what I can't come to terms with is, why can't we figure, this does not seem like rocket science to me, folks. Like, you're setting up the future of your leadership track. I don't get why this is such a problem. I don't get it, Becky. Can you help me understand? Like, of all things, like, we can't figure this out.
I'm going to say complacency. It's really easy to get complacent with the existing leadership. The board gets very comfortable with the existing CEO and the existing executives that are there. And there tends to be a little bit of a feeling that they're always going to be around. Right? They're always going to be here. I mean, they seem happy. We have a good compensation package. Things are good. So it's complacency and a little bit of head in the sand, ostrich. I don't really want to think about it. And many times boards don't really start thinking about it until the CEO says, hey, I'm retiring. But what really can happen, which is kind of scary, is what if, the CEO wins the lottery, let's say that, or they find another job and the board has never even considered that could have even been a possibility. And so then they're scrambling at the last minute to try to figure something out. And it kind of becomes a chaotic situation in the organization. And trickle down, what happens is when there's uncertainty in the organization about who the leadership is, regardless of if it's the CEO or an executive vice president or somebody in senior leadership, people in the organization start to get nervous because they're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? And the longer it goes on without people knowing what's going to happen, like I even saw one the other day that they announced the new CEO like a year before the existing CEO was exiting. I thought that was interesting. I also saw somebody get hired as the co-CEO that would be sitting next to the existing CEO for a period of time. So I think you're starting to see boards think about transition more, but at the end of the day, it's just out of sight, out of mind. I don't want to think about it. It's a checkbox that, yes, we have a succession plan and moving on. And then they're caught blindsided when something happens.
Monica, anything you want to add to close this segment out?
Well, I think just hearing everyone's commentary, but also looking at the 5 pitfalls, when you tie everything back, it goes back into almost the hope circuit of when we're having associates to see a path, regardless if you're in the C-suite or maybe you're in the manager executive level that are a couple levels down, but you are getting those stretch projects, is to be able to feel invested in and experience that growth, because there are, and you see this a lot, is good talent that leaves. You want to invest in those good talents because that could be potentially the executive team in a few years or down the road, and being able to really help and engage so that they can believe in their future at the credit union.
Credit unions were built on a simple idea: serve your community, be local. But a recent article in QSO magazine argues that model no longer works, claiming geographic localism isn't competitive in a world of fintechs and national lenders that scale digitally. So the article advises that more credit unions should expand beyond their local footprint through mergers and digital lending to build scale and stay relevant. Monica, spicy question incoming. Do you agree with the article that credit unions need to kind of sort of leave behind their local roots to compete today?
No, I actually would not agree with that, because especially at our organization, so at OneAZ, our focus is to be local. Our roots are a local focus, and we're invested in the community. And I'll share 2 ways. I think the first part is that we're looking at investing in the communities as part of our mission. We're here to serve the members, the associates, and the communities where we live. And so that is a strong focus of supporting the local businesses, the local communities where there is volunteer work or giving back through our foundation, is just tying that back as an individual credit union, but it's also growing the credit union movement. So at OneAZ, we're part of a separate initiative. It's called Arizona Credit Unions Week, and now an Arizona Steering Committee. So if you have any insight for those listening too of how to collaborate with other credit unions, I'd love to talk to you, because that's something that is important to us, to collaborate and learn from other credit unions that are physically based in Arizona, that was started in Arizona, so that we can grow our movement together as a cooperative movement. And so to answer the question, yes, keep everything local. It's a big piece of why credit unions do what they do and what we matter and how we help those in our communities across the state.
So QSO magazine has a rating on articles, and I think Monica spoke to the power of being local. I think most people disagreed with the author of that article, because it was, you can give it a point or you can give it a negative point. And the article was at like -22. So like most people did not agree with the author. But now let's kick it to you, Becky, because you know the foundational roots are important. You're more aware of the history of credit unions than just about anybody. You've written a book on it. I've read. Great book. But we are moving to the future. We do need to be thinking digital. So I think the author of this article is really trying to say, look, just existing in your backyard is no longer acceptable if you want to be competitive in this world. What are your thoughts, Becky?
I agree with the spirit of the article. I don't agree with the specific application of the article. So where I'm going to take this is, I think that credit unions differentiate themselves by being original. And when you just expand your community to a state or, whatever, even the whole country, let's say, if you could get that kind of a charter, you just homogenize yourself, and you might as well just be a community or a regional bank. And so credit unions were specifically founded and designed to serve a very specific niche. And that differentiation is what makes us stronger. Whenever you look at the bank lobby and all of the slings and arrows they throw at credit unions, it is mostly about they act like we do, but they don't get taxed. And so by just saying expand and acquire and get bigger so that you can serve more is exactly what the banks are saying we shouldn't be doing. And I actually agree with the banks. We shouldn't. Now, where I'm going to take it is, yes, local is important. Yes, being in your community is important. If you still are a seg-based credit union, I say absolutely double down on that. Those are fewer and far between now than they used to be. But what I'm going to say is we're talking about digital, right? We're talking about not being analog anymore. We're talking about being branchless. And to Gen Z, their Venmo app is their primary financial institution. How can we make sure that we double down on our differentiation and our seg-based mentality while still serving a broad digital community? And the way that you do that, in my opinion, is to expand the field of membership in which we can serve. So for example, could Team Fortress players have a credit union? They have a common bond. They all play a certain type of video game. They have an online community that is very robust and very active where people are sharing things amongst each other. And there is a demographic that likes to play that game. Couldn't a credit union double down on that differentiation and serve that very specific group? Well, the answer is yes. The challenge is that NCUA right now probably would not approve that field of membership, which seems crazy. So I think instead of saying, oh, let's just open up our charters to 25 different states, instead, let's try to figure out how to serve even more niche communities and just do it in a digitally native way.
Monica, anything you want to add to close out the segment?
Yes, I would say from like an acquisition, when we're looking at from scale or local, I'll use us for example. I think when I look at wearing with the OneAZ hat in my role, we currently acquired First Bank of Yuma, and that just expanded our footprint. And to what Becky was saying, it is important from the digital side. We've always served our members digitally. We went through a conversion for our app to make it better a few years ago, but expanding that statewide presence just made us be able to go and outreach further and serve them in a different way. So we always serve them digitally in Yuma, but this way now we have 5 branches that can serve. So I do think that there is something with local and scale that you can achieve both, but it's not going to be always the answer for everybody. I think in our case, yes, that was something that I'd say we could focus on both, but you take it on a case-by-case basis.
That brings us to the end of the show. So now it's time for final thoughts. Monica, any final thoughts or plugs that you have for the listeners?
When I look at all of the conversations that we had today, it's like tying everything back into the hope circuit. The hope circuit is the underlying theme of all the discussions that we had. It was, how do you look at the talent of, are we creating the wins and being able to celebrate together and to have the transparency, but also setting up for succession so that we have that bench when we're leading into that, but also keeping the local focus. But overall, just the credit union movement. I've been in the credit union industry for 8 years, and just seeing how we can learn from one another and collaborate and have discussions like these are so special. And that brings hope into when we're looking at overall the theme of the hope circuit.
And Monica, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way they can contact you?
I am pretty active on LinkedIn, so find me on LinkedIn. It's Monica Meyerand, but I can leave my information in terms of my handle so that you can reach out to me. We're always looking to, if there's questions or collaborations, being able to help further and bring a cooperative movement along outside of Arizona. So appreciate the time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Monica. Becky, final thoughts?
What I love about credit unions is what they're doing internally. Working in the credit union industry, many people that come into this space, she's been in 8 years, I've been in 30 years. Once they come into this space, they realize how special it is, and serving the community, members first, taking care of our employees, as well as creating things that our employees know makes an impact. They are part of something bigger than themselves. And this Hope Circuit is exactly an example of one of those things. The employees who work there buy into it. They understand how it benefits themselves and the community. And that is something that will stay with them throughout their careers. And most of them will stay in credit unions. So I love what you guys are doing, and credit unions are here to stay. We hear about doomsday stuff, right? Consolidation and all of these things. But at the end of the day, our industry really is thriving and growing, and I'm super happy to be a part of it.
And if people want to get in touch with you, Becky, what do they do?
LinkedIn, baby.
LinkedIn, baby, is exactly the right response. That's exactly what I was looking for. I want to give a special thanks to our guest. I want to thank my co-host, and I want to give a special thanks to you, our listeners, for continuing to support and listen to another episode of Grow Your Credit Union. If you like the show, follow us on your podcast player of choice. If you want to be a guest or would like to talk about sponsorship opportunities, head to growyourcreditunion.com to learn more. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.